Everyone at the Brooks Ranch thought the billionaire had gone blind, but only one person knew the truth, and she wished she did not. Late that night, when the house was quiet and the wind pushed against the windows, little Liam cried in his wheelchair, begging someone to help him. His voice was soft, but the fear in it shook the walls of the ranch. And the woman who broke him, the same woman Daniel planned to marry, stood over him with a smile that did not belong to a human heart. While Daniel pretended he could see nothing, Elena saw everything. She saw the way Melissa leaned close to the boy, the way her voice changed, the way her shadow looked darker than the night behind her. One wrong move, one wrong word, and everything inside that house would break. And when Daniel finally opened his eyes and spoke the truth, it was already too late, because a secret far more dangerous had already entered the ranch, waiting to destroy the only family Liam had left. Daniel Brooks sat quietly in his living room that morning, pretending to stare into empty space. The soft sunlight rested on his face, yet he kept his eyes still, acting like he saw nothing. His world looked calm on the outside, but inside him, everything was shaking. His hands trembled on the arm of the couch, and he pressed them together to hide it. He wondered how long he could keep pretending he was blind. He wondered how long he had to wait before Melissa showed her real self. The ranch was silent, except for the faint sound of wheels rolling on the wooden floor. Liam was moving toward him. The 8-year-old pushed his wheelchair slowly, trying not to disturb his father. He stopped beside the couch and looked up at him with soft, tired eyes. The accident had taken his mother and taken his ability to walk, and Daniel carried that pain every single night. "Dad, are you all right?" Liam asked in a quiet voice. Daniel wanted to look into his son's eyes and hold him tight, but he kept his head still. He forced his voice to sound calm as he replied, "I am fine, Liam. I am right here with you." Liam nodded, but Daniel could hear the sadness in his breathing. The boy missed the father who used to run with him, help him draw, lift him into the saddle to ride his pony. Now Daniel had to act weak, helpless, unable to see anything. It hurt him deeply, but he had no choice. He needed to know who Melissa truly was. Not long after Liam left the room, he heard the clicking sound of heels on the floor. Melissa walked in with a sharp smile on her face. Her perfume filled the air, heavy and sweet. She leaned close to Daniel, pretending to adjust his shirt collar. "Good morning, Daniel," she said, but her tone carried no warmth. "I hope you slept well, even though everything is now so difficult." Daniel nodded gently. He said nothing. He listened instead. Melissa sighed loudly and crossed her arms. "I cannot keep doing everything for you and that boy," she muttered. "That boy." Daniel's heart tightened. He stayed silent, pretending he did not hear her. Melissa walked away, complaining under her breath about how tiring life had become ever since the accident, how Liam always wanted attention, how blind men needed too much care. Daniel breathed slowly. Every word confirmed his fear. He kept his eyes still, but inside, he was counting every second until he found the truth he needed. Later that evening, Elena Ramirez arrived for her first full shift. She walked into the ranch quietly, holding a small bag and her notebook. Her brown skin glowed softly under the hall light, and her eyes looked gentle but tired. She came from Oklahoma to work and support her sick mother, and she needed this job more than anything. When she saw Liam sitting alone with his sketchbook, her face softened. She knelt beside him and smiled. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. Liam nodded happily. Elena took a pencil from the table and held it out to him. "Show me what you like to draw," she said in a warm voice. For the first time in weeks, Liam laughed lightly. He opened his sketchbook and showed her a picture of the ranch. His small hands shook a little as he held the page, but Elena placed her hand over his gently and steadied it. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "You have a strong hand, Liam, even if you feel weak sometimes." Daniel heard every word from the next room. The kindness in Elena's voice touched him, and his throat tightened with emotion. He listened to Liam's soft laughter and felt something inside him start to heal. But he could not show it. Not yet. Melissa watched them from the staircase with anger growing inside her. Her eyes followed Elena like she was a threat. She hated the way Liam smiled around her. She hated the way Daniel seemed calmer when Elena was near. She felt something slipping out of her control, and she promised herself she would not let it happen. That night, when the lamps were dim and everyone was getting ready for bed, Elena passed by Liam's room and heard him crying. Her heart pulled her into the room. The boy sat in his wheelchair with his hands covering his face. "Liam, what is wrong?" she asked softly. He shook his head, unable to speak. She went down on her knees and wiped his tears. "Tell me, Liam, I am here." He took a deep breath and whispered, "Melissa came in here. She told me I make her tired. She said she will send me away when she marries Dad. She said my mom would be ashamed of me." Elena froze, and her heart sank. She held Liam close, gently rocking him. Daniel stood behind the half-closed door. He had come to check on Liam, pretending he needed help finding the hall. He heard every word, every broken cry from his son's mouth, every cruel thing Melissa said. His hands began to shake, but he kept his eyes still, pretending to see nothing. Inside him, something cracked. And for the first time since he pretended to be blind, Daniel Brooks felt real fear for what might happen next, because he now knew that the woman he planned to marry was dangerous in a way he never expected. Daniel stood behind the half-closed door as Liam cried in Elena's arms. The soft sobs of his son cut through him like a knife. He wanted to run into the room, lift Liam up, and tell him everything would be fine, but he forced himself to stay still. His plan was not ready yet. His heart was shaking, but he could not move. He needed to know how far Melissa was willing to go, and tonight showed him that she could hurt a child without blinking. After a few minutes, Elena wiped Liam's face gently. She spoke to him in a soft voice that sounded like pure comfort. "You are strong, Liam. You are not a problem. You are not a burden," she said, holding his cheeks with both hands. "You are a good boy, and no one has the right to make you feel small." Liam sniffed and leaned against her shoulder. Elena stayed with him, patient and calm, until his breathing slowed. Daniel took a quiet step back into the hallway. His chest felt heavy as he thought of how long Liam had been suffering under Melissa's cruel words. Later, when the house grew quiet, Elena stepped outside to breathe. The night air was cool, and the sky was full of small, bright stars. She sat on the porch steps, folding her hands in her lap. She had only worked at the ranch for a short time, yet she already felt protective of Liam. The way he cried tonight worried her, and she wondered how much more he had been holding inside. Daniel followed her slowly, pretending to feel his way along the wall. He stopped near the porch, listening to her breathing. He spoke in a soft tone. "Elena, are you outside?" he asked. "Yes, sir, I am here," she replied gently. "Do you need something?" Daniel walked toward the sound of her voice and sat carefully beside her. Elena guided him so he would not miss the step. He felt the warmth of her kindness even in the smallest touch. "I heard Liam crying earlier," Daniel said, lowering his head. "He does not cry often, not like that." Elena hesitated. She did not want to cause trouble, but she could not lie. "He is hurting, sir," she said quietly. "He feels lonely, and he feels scared." Daniel swallowed hard. "Did he tell you why he was scared?" he asked. Elena looked down at her hands. "Yes," she whispered. Silence filled the air. The only sound was the gentle wind moving across the fields. Daniel waited, giving her time. Finally, Elena said, "It was Melissa, sir. She came into his room. She said things that no child should hear." Daniel felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What did she say?" he asked. Elena explained slowly. She told him about the harsh words, the threat of sending Liam away, the insult to Liam's late mother, the cold tone Melissa used. Daniel breathed deeply, trying to keep his anger inside. He did not want Elena to know he had already heard everything. He needed her honesty, and he needed to watch how people acted around him. "Thank you for telling me," Daniel said with a tired voice. Elena touched his arm gently. "Sir, Liam needs love, not fear," she said. "He needs someone who will see his heart, not his wheelchair." Daniel felt tears sitting at the edge of his eyes. He turned his face slightly so she would not notice, even though she would have said nothing if she did. "I am grateful you are here," he whispered. Hours later, when everyone went to sleep, Melissa sat alone in her room. She held her phone tightly, whispering angrily into the screen as she talked to Tanya. "I do not care if he is blind or not. Elena is getting too close," she said. "The boy likes her too much, and Daniel listens to her." Tanya laughed in a low voice. "Then get rid of her," she said. "Do not wait." Melissa frowned. "I need a plan," she said. "A strong one." They spoke for a long time, planning something with quiet voices and cruel thoughts. Melissa had no idea that the walls in the ranch were thin, and she did not know that Elena, on her way to the kitchen for a glass of water, had paused at the sound of her voice. Elena stood in the hallway, holding her breath. She heard only small parts of the conversation, but it was enough to scare her. She knew Melissa was planning something dangerous, something unfair. She placed her hand on her chest and whispered a small prayer, asking for strength. The next morning, the ranch began its day slowly. The sun rose over the open fields, covering everything in a soft golden light. Liam sat at the breakfast table, drawing with Elena. Daniel sat across from them, pretending he could not see the smiles on their faces. But he saw everything. He saw the way Liam's shoulders relaxed when Elena was near. He saw how Elena paid attention to every small detail, every emotion, every need. Melissa walked into the dining room and noticed the scene. Anger burned in her eyes, but she forced a sweet smile. "Good morning," she said as she kissed Daniel's head without any feeling. She looked at Elena and said, "I think you should clean Liam's room again today. It looks messy." "It is not messy," Liam said softly. "I cleaned it yesterday." Melissa turned sharply toward him. "Do not interrupt adults," she said. Elena placed her hand gently on Liam's back. Daniel clenched his fists under the table. Every moment he pretended to be blind grew harder. Every second he watched Melissa hurt, Liam felt like fire inside his chest. When breakfast ended, Melissa stepped outside to make a phone call. Daniel followed quietly, using his cane to mask his steps. He stood near the open window and listened. "Tanya, we need to move fast," Melissa said. "I want that girl out of this ranch." "What is the plan?" Tanya asked. "We plant something in her room," Melissa whispered. "Something that will make him fire her without thinking twice." Daniel felt the world slow around him. His stomach twisted, and his hands shook. He had heard enough. He stepped back quietly, breathing slowly to keep himself steady. Inside, Elena helped Liam with his homework. The boy laughed at a small joke she made. She ruffled his hair and smiled. The room felt warm, safe, and full of peace. Daniel stopped in the doorway, pretending he needed help finding the chair. But in truth, he was looking at the only two people who still felt real in his life. He stood there with a heavy heart, understanding that the storm was coming closer, and if he did not act soon, everything he cared about would fall apart. The morning after Melissa's phone call felt strange, like the ranch was holding its breath. The sky looked calm, but inside the house, something dark was waiting to happen. Daniel sat in his study, pretending to struggle while reaching for a glass of water. He kept up the blindness act carefully, but his mind was sharp, watching every sound and every movement around him. He knew Melissa had a plan. He knew she wanted to destroy Elena. He knew danger was getting close. What he did not know was how far Melissa would go, or how quickly she would move. Elena worked quietly that morning. She wiped the shelves, folded blankets, and checked on Liam every few minutes. The boy was drawing at the dining table, his wheelchair beside him. His soft hand kept moving across the paper. He tried to smile, but it was weak. His eyes looked tired from all the fear he held inside. When Elena leaned close to see his drawing, he whispered, "Do you think my dad is really blind?" as if the walls could hear them. Elena hesitated. She did not want to lie, but she also did not want to break Daniel's secret. She placed her hand gently on Liam's shoulder and said, "Your dad loves you more than anything, Liam. That is what matters. Blind or not blind, he is here for you." Liam nodded slowly, but she knew he wanted a clearer answer. She would give it later, when the time was safe. In the kitchen, Melissa stood with a small velvet jewelry box in her hand. She opened it and looked at the expensive necklace inside. It was bright, heavy, and worth enough money to ruin someone's life. Her fingers shook slightly as she closed the box and slipped it into her pocket. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Tanya had told her exactly what to do. She had to plant the necklace where Elena would never expect it. She had to act fast, act innocent, and act shocked later when the private investigator arrived. Everything had to look real. Melissa walked through the hallway slowly, pretending to check the decorations on the wall. Her eyes moved from room to room. She waited until Elena left Liam's side to take out the trash. She waited until the hall was empty. Then she stepped into Elena's bedroom. The small room felt warm and simple. Elena had placed a photo of her sick mother on the table beside her bed. A folded blanket sat at the edge of the mattress. The room smelled clean, like lavender and fresh sheets. Melissa closed the door behind her and placed the box under Elena's pillow. She pressed it deep, making sure it was hidden. Her lips curved into a small smile. "This will teach you your place," she whispered to herself. She walked out quietly, leaving the door half open to look normal. Meanwhile, Daniel had been standing at the end of the hallway, pretending he was trying to find the guest bathroom. He did not see her place, the necklace, but he saw her leave the room with that same sharp smile she always wore when she had done something cruel. It was enough to confirm his fear. Elena is in danger, Daniel thought. I have to move before Melissa destroys her. But he had to be smart. One wrong move could break everything. A few hours later, the private investigator arrived at the ranch. He was a tall man with cold eyes and a fake friendly smile. He shook Daniel's hand and spoke loudly, as if speaking to someone who could not see made him feel powerful. "Mr. Brooks, I am here to help," the man said. "Melissa called me because she believes something is wrong in the house." Daniel kept his eyes still, pretending not to look at him. "What are you searching for?" he asked calmly. The investigator replied, "Something valuable." Melissa stood behind him, with her arms crossed and her face full of fake worry. Elena watched from the living room, confused and frightened. She had never been searched for anything in her life. Liam moved closer to her, gripping her hand. "Elena did not do anything," he whispered. "I know," she said softly. "Do not be afraid." Daniel wanted to step forward and protect Elena, but he had to watch the investigator's every move. He had to see how the plan would unfold. The investigator began checking rooms. He opened drawers, lifted blankets, and scanned every corner with sharp eyes. When he reached Elena's room, he paused. Melissa stood behind him, pretending not to care, even though her heart was beating with secret excitement. He lifted the pillow and stopped. The necklace was there. Elena covered her mouth as she gasped. Liam cried out, "No, she did not do that. She would never." The investigator held the necklace up high, letting the sunlight hit it so it sparkled. "This was hidden under the pillow," he said. Elena shook her head over and over. "I did not touch that necklace," she said in a scared voice. "I do not even know what it looks like." Melissa cut in quickly. "Daniel, I told you she was acting strange. I told you something was off. Daniel stayed silent. He had to stay calm. The investigator stepped closer to Elena. I will have to report this, he said in a cold tone. Liam pushed his wheelchair forward and grabbed Daniel's hand. Dad, please say something. Please help her, he cried. Daniel's entire body tightened. He could no longer pretend. He wanted to reveal everything, but he needed proof. He needed to catch Melissa in her lie. So he turned his face toward the investigator and said in a quiet voice, "Let us not jump to conclusions. We will talk first." Melissa frowned. She expected him to fire Elena immediately. She expected him to shout. She expected him to break. But Daniel stayed calm, and that worried her. That night, Elena sat alone in the maid's quarters with tears rolling down her cheeks. She hugged her knees and tried to breathe. She had never felt shame like this. She had never felt fear like this. She thought about her sick mother in Oklahoma and how she needed this job. She thought about Liam and how she could not leave him alone. A soft knock came at her door. She wiped her face quickly. "Come in," she said. The door opened slowly, and Daniel stepped in. He used his cane to stay in character, but his voice carried more emotion than ever before. "Elena," he said gently, "I believe you." She covered her mouth as more tears fell. He walked closer and placed his hand carefully on her shoulder. "You are not alone," he whispered. "I will find the truth." Outside, Melissa stood in the shadows, watching, her face turning cold. She did not plan to lose, and she was ready to make things worse. Much worse. The night felt heavy on the Brooks Ranch. The sky was dark, and the wind moved the curtains slowly, like it knew something dangerous was close. Daniel sat in his study with the lights off, thinking quietly. The truth was now clear in his mind. Melissa had planted the necklace. Tanya had helped her. The private investigator was corrupt. Elena was innocent. Yet she sat in her small room crying because someone wanted to destroy her. Daniel knew he could not wait any longer. He could not keep pretending to be blind. He had to protect Elena, and he had to protect Liam. He needed to end the fight that Melissa started. Liam entered the study in his wheelchair. His eyes were red from crying, and his small hands kept shaking. "Dad," he whispered, "will Elena be taken away from us?" Daniel placed both hands on Liam's shoulders. He spoke gently. "No, Liam, she will not be taken from us. I promise you." Liam lowered his head. "Did she really steal?" he asked in a soft, scared voice. Daniel lifted his son's chin. "No, Liam, she did not take anything. She is a good person. She is kind. Someone is trying to hurt her." Liam closed his eyes and whispered, "It was Melissa." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Why do you say that?" he asked. "Because she looked happy when the necklace was found," Liam said quietly, "and she keeps saying she will send me away. People who love us do not do things like that." Daniel bent down and kissed the top of Liam's head. "You are right," he said. "You understand more than people think." The rest of the house was quiet, but Daniel knew Melissa was somewhere planning her next move. He had to act fast. He took out his phone and called Dr. Bennett, the family friend he trusted more than anyone. "Come to the ranch early in the morning," Daniel said. "I need your help. It is serious." "I will be there," Dr. Bennett replied. Daniel ended the call and leaned back. He took a deep breath, knowing the next day would change everything. The sun rose slowly the next morning. The ranch looked peaceful, but Daniel knew the peace was not real. He dressed quietly and walked to Elena's room. He knocked softly. Elena opened the door with tired eyes. She had cried through the night. Her face looked pale, and her hands shook a little. "Sir, I will pack my bags," she whispered. "I do not want trouble." Daniel stepped inside and shook his head. "Elena, you are not leaving," he said in a calm voice. "You did nothing wrong." She looked down. "But the necklace was in my room," she said. People believe what they see. Daniel moved closer and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. I know the truth, he said, and I will prove it today. Liam suddenly rolled into the room. He stopped beside Elena and took her hand. Do not go, he said. We need you. Elena covered her mouth as tears formed again. She knelt beside him and hugged him. I am not going anywhere, she whispered. I will stay because you both believe in me. Minutes later, Dr. Bennett arrived. He stepped into the living room with a serious expression. Daniel greeted him and whispered the full story. Dr. Bennett nodded, understanding the danger. Melissa walked downstairs with a fake smile. She saw Dr. Bennett and pretended to be polite. Doctor, good morning, she said. Good morning, he replied without warmth. Daniel stood in the center of the room. He took a deep breath and said loudly, Melissa, we need to talk. Please sit down. Melissa crossed her arms. What is this about? She asked. Daniel slowly removed his dark glasses. He looked straight at her. His eyes were clear and sharp. Melissa froze. You can see, she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, Melissa, he said. I can see everything. Melissa stepped back. Her face turned pale. How long? She asked in a shaking voice. Long enough, Daniel replied. Long enough to know who you truly are. Elena stood behind Liam, holding his shoulders gently. The private investigator entered at that moment, expecting to continue the lie. But Daniel faced him directly. You are not welcome here, Daniel said, and I know what you did. The investigator pretended to act confused, but his eyes began to shift nervously. Dr. Bennett pulled out his tablet. Daniel asked me to check the security system last night, he said. There are small cameras in the hallway, cameras you and your friend forgot to consider. Melissa's mouth fell open. What cameras? She asked. Dr. Bennett clicked a video. On the small screen, Melissa was seen entering Elena's room alone, placing something under the pillow, then leaving with a smile. The recording was clear and sharp. The room fell silent. Elena covered her mouth. Liam held her hand tightly. Daniel stared at Melissa with deep disappointment. How could you do this to Elena? Daniel asked in a low voice. How could you hurt my son with your words? How could you plan to send him away? How could you lie to me every single day? Melissa began shaking. Daniel, I can explain, she said. No, Daniel replied. You cannot explain cruelty. Not today. The front door opened, and Sheriff Collins walked in. Dr. Bennett had already told him everything. The sheriff stepped toward Melissa. Melissa Carter, you are under arrest for conspiracy, planting evidence, and harassment, he said. Tanya arrived moments later, hoping to help Melissa escape the mess, but the sheriff recognized her name immediately and arrested her too. As Melissa was taken out in handcuffs, she stared at Daniel with anger. You will regret this, she said. Daniel shook his head. The only regret I have is letting you near my son, he replied calmly. The door closed behind her, and the house became peaceful again. Elena sank to the floor in tears. Relief washed over her like warm rain. Daniel walked to her and helped her stand. You are safe now, he said. She looked into his eyes, thinking of the blind act that had controlled the house for days. You trusted me, she whispered. Yes, Daniel said softly, and I was afraid of losing you. Elena felt her heart move in her chest. She did not know how strong Daniel's feelings were until that moment. Liam rolled toward them and placed his hands around both of them. We are a team, he said with a small smile. Daniel and Elena looked at him and nodded. A team. A family. Something new was beginning. 1 month later, under the large oak trees on the ranch, Daniel and Elena exchanged simple vows. Elena's mother stood proudly beside them, healthy again because Daniel paid for her treatment. Liam served as the ring-bearer, his smile bright as the sun. When the ceremony ended, Liam handed them a drawing he made. It showed 3 people holding hands under a big sun, with the words, My family, written at the top. Daniel looked at Elena. Elena looked at Liam. And in that moment, their hearts found peace. Dear viewers, this story teaches us that true love is not seen with the eyes, it is felt with the heart. Daniel pretended to be blind, but in the end, it was his heart that opened and showed him the truth. It teaches that money cannot measure love, and real family is made from kindness, trust, and courage. Elena walked into the ranch as a maid, but her warm heart healed a broken father and gave a lonely child the comfort he had been praying for. Liam found a mother's love again, and Daniel found peace after years of pain. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, tell us in the comment section where you are watching from, and tell us what you learned from this story. Your comments help our family grow. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can learn from stories like this. And if you want more emotional stories from us, simply comment, "More stories," and you will be among the first to receive the next touching story. Before you go, here are 3 questions for you to answer in the comments. 1. Do you think Daniel's plan to pretend to be blind was a good idea, or did it cause more pain than help? 2. What part of Elena's kindness touched you the most? 3. If you were in Liam's place, what would you have wished for the most? We cannot wait to read your answers. Thank you for watching.